Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today.
Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm here with longtime Unicorn Society member, friend, fitness badass, Chris Perry. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Michael. Great. How are you doing?
I'm so good. So, friends, this is your first time on the podcast, isn't it, Chris? I can't remember.
We did a dual podcast.
That's right. You were in the Roundtable podcast before. That's right. So some listeners, hardcore B4U podcast listeners might remember Chris, but as a reminder, he is the founder and owner of Velocity Sports Performance in Norwood, Massachusetts. And Chris, just tell us people a little bit about Velocity and how, your experience in Unicorn Society all these years.
Yeah, so basically we opened in 2003. And again, as Michael said, we're a sports performance training gym that also does general population adults. So we joined right at the beginning of the Unicorns when it was just a beta test.
We were just trying it out for a little while, and now six years later, how long's it been?
2016, yeah. The setup the first year was like, we're just trying to figure this out. So we're just kind of winging it, and let's see what happens, see what works. So it's gone a long way since then.
Yeah, well, thanks for sticking with us through all the growing pains. It's been so great to have you in the group. And fun fact, you have a long-term history with Pete.
Yeah, so the way my background is more business, so I'm not a coach. So I'm kind of a little unicorn within the unicorns, kind of like your background. So
yep.
I found the concept of a training gym by joining Cressy Sports Performance probably 15 years ago. And I was a member as an adult for about 5 years. And that kind of led me into this profession to say, once I was going to, kind of open my own business, what would be exciting and fulfilling. And then I figured out how to do something like Cressy, not certainly at that level, but, and they were great mentors, Eric, Tony, and Pete, on trying to help me with that transition. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that Cressy was your springboard into becoming a fitness entrepreneur. That's amazing. Well, actually, let's dive in, because the topic we decided we were going to talk about today is specific to your style of gym. And I think we have more and more listeners these days who are listening to the podcast who've been following Cressy or been following Pete, who are sports performance training facilities like you are. And being a sports performance facility where you work on youth athletes, teen athletes, sometimes adult athletes, and have a general population adult clients, that is a tricky model. It's a tricky model because you're dealing with multiple avatars that you have to market to. You're dealing with multiple abilities you have to cater to. You're dealing with multiple needs on the training floor that you have to adjust for on a regular basis. And so I was going to talk a little bit about that today, and just, what are the things that you've learned that work well? What are the things about that model that you're still trying to figure out? So let's start with the good stuff. What are the things over the last year or so that you've been doing that has really been working to wrap your arms around all of those moving parts of your kind of business?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've realized over the years is that the adult business is really important to our overall kind of health and wellness of the business. The sports performance business is very choppy. So kids come in for 3 months, they're in preseason, they go away, they come back. So if you look at our revenues, it's really kind of up and down. So the importance of the general population adult business within our population really is to kind of even things out. So we need a good, solid adult business to allow the sports performance to have the natural ebb and flow. So the first thing was recognizing that's important. At the beginning, it was just like, let's just have a couple of adult classes and just see what happens.
Yep.
low level, low price. So realizing that stable business is important in the sports performance world because of the nature of it, and then trying to figure out how to bring in what kind of adults do you want to bring in. At first, it was just like bring anybody,
Sure.
and then
And everyone does that, right? In the
yeah,
first few years, you're like, we're for everyone,
everybody.
until you realize that that's not very sustainable. So yeah, so we've all done that.
Yeah. And then it was not realizing, then it was, I was in some groups, and then it was just general population adults, which, I think, and I think you and I have talked to well, is sometimes you want to, even if you don't want to be everybody, you want a broad net.
Hmm.
So that included total newbies, people that wanted to do kind of major weight loss goals. And we tried that for a while. And what we found was people so intimidated um, by the kind of gym we are. We
Sure.
we don't kind of we don't have machines. Our website looks like it's we're training combine athletes. So what we didn't realize is that people were so scared off by that we really were not getting a lot of traction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that happens. I mean, I think it's, first of all, I just want to say bravo to you for recognizing that, as a sports performance facility, if your focus is sports performance, you're going to have a very seasonal business. And that's tough, not impossible, but it's really hard to manage a business where some months are gangbusters and some months are just deserts of cash flow, right? It's really tough. And so many of them, just like you did, they also have another side of the business that helps even out the cash flow throughout the year and provide a stable base. And that often is a general population adult business. And the fact that you're trying to plop general population adults who come from a variety of experiences and have lots of needs into a facility that was really built for sports, built for performance, built for youth athletes, right? It can be a very intimidating environment. And so paying attention to who is that adult avatar who is going to thrive in an environment with no machines, people sprinting around, like that kind of energy is a very specific kind of adult. So, what have you been doing to try to better understand who your ideal adult avatar is?
Yeah, so we went through kind of the very kind of standardized process with our staff about looking at our avatar. So, the first thing we did is kind of feedback in my mind all the interviews we've done, and I looked at our roster, like who's still with us, right?
Yep.
Like who stuck around and who lasted 4 or 5 months and then left. It became very apparent it's the people that stuck with us, connected with us at the core of being challenged, having a challenging workout, not impossible, but they weren't coming from. They all had been active in the past, even though they may have lapsed.
Sure.
They recognized that they need to get back at it, but it was not. I've never stepped into the gym before, so
Yeah.
then it was okay. Now that we understand that Sally, who is our avatar, is 50 years old, and it works, has kind of older kids, has been active in the past but has been sedentary. That got us a lot more focused on, those type of people to be, and I think part of the process you go through is like, pick your best client, you want more of them. It's very simple.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so our avatar should look like that, and then that drove us down a path of looking at the experience that those people will have coming in and making sure that we're not overwhelming them even still.
Yeah. Well, even that distinction for your avatar, Sally, I love her name, is fantastic, right? Because, and that's a great example of narrowing down. We work with everyone always to, well, we really want people who've had some experience exercising in the past. And even that narrows down the field tremendously, right? We know most Americans have never had a gym membership, right? The vast majority. And so even that narrows it down to people who have, played sports when they were young or used to work out, excuse me, years ago, and maybe they've lapsed. And you're right, and that only narrows it down for the purpose of marketing and sales, but also narrows it down for the kind of experience that you can give them in their first few visits, right? If you're going to give them a great experience for a trial, then this is someone who's coming in and at one point they knew how to do a push-up, right? At one point, they were really comfortable having a relationship with their body that involved pushing themselves, challenging themselves, listening to their body, right? That's in them somewhere, and that's a very different starting place than someone who's just never stepped foot in the gym before. Not that, and frankly, places like MFF are built specifically for those people,
Yeah.
right? Where we do go very slow and we want people who've never stepped in front of a gym before. But we also need places like you're mentioning, your place, where people who are coming in, they already have some experience. And that distinction is such a great kind of lens for you and your team to understand how to give them the best possible experience. The other thing I've seen you do, even with clients who've been around for a while, is I know you did this recently, is you take your clients, your existing clients, out to dinner
Yeah.
and get feedback from them. So you just talk a little bit about the purpose that serves in refining your avatar.
Yeah, so as we look at to the point of now we're doing a lot of work on the experience that new people coming in the door as we have a push to have more new people. Even with that targeted avatar, we will get the newbies coming in. So I think part of this process would be now we're uber focused on that person's going to really have a time. So let's make sure, we want to welcome them anyway as well.
Yeah.
So we just have to understand that person's experience is going to be very different. And we have to make sure we recognize that. So basically we brought 3 or 4 long-term members with us to dinner, set the expectations. Sometimes they can be kind of a here's I'm going to complain about everything about the gym, like why can't I have class
Sure.
all the time. But really it was about like we are looking to speed to quicken the integration of new members into our community, because when you have people a long time, they clicky's not the right answer, but they congregate together and they talk, and new people kind of stand and shuffle their feet and kind of wait for the class to start. So periodically we go to dinner and just say, like, what do you see problems that we have? And some great feedback was, one member said, you guys have stopped explaining before the class starts what the exercises are, because we've all been here so long that we all know what a goblet squat and an RDL is and a reverse lunge, and new people they're like totally, they don't want to say they don't know it, and they struggle. There's a great call out that we've gotten kind of complacent that way. So really the idea is have them tell us, and then what that process also does is they step in. Like we had one woman basically said, if someone new comes in, I'm totally happy to stand next to them and say, listen, let's go slow. And in her mind, she said, I don't mind giving up my workout that day because let's start light and start slow and not go and maybe take a round off and just make it okay for them not to keep up with some of the other people.
Yeah. I mean, how brilliant is that? I mean, like, what a beautiful example of what community can do, right? That people have been around long enough. And first of all, I'll just pause and say, listeners, if you are not in the habit of taking some of your best clients out to lunch or coffee or dinner and having these conversations with them, that's your takeaway from today. Go do that immediately. I mean, it's brilliant, right? Because, and Chris did a really good job of setting up the expectations for that dinner. They're like, hey, this is not going to be just a vent fest. Right, I just don't want you to just complain about classes or how clean the towels are. Right, this dinner is going to be about is how can you help support us integrating new people into our culture and into our community faster. And that focus, I think, got you so many great ideas. I mean, the fact that one of your clients is like, yeah, I'll stand next to the new people and go slow with them on their first visit is just so tremendous. And I always think, and this is maybe a little bit woo-woo for a second, but everything you need to have a successful, thriving community already exists in the community. Right? It's all there beneath the surface. You just need to create the conditions by which they're willing to stand up and offer these suggestions. So you making it safe for them to come to dinner and share these ideas and safe to say, like, I'll go slow with them. Can I walk over to them and do it with them? Right? Yeah. Your community knows how to take care of itself. And your job is to just, water those seeds and help and let them thrive. So, I mean, what else did you learn from that dinner?
Well, I think the other, the follow up on that would be is like the members are looking for permission to do that. They didn't feel like they do that on their own. So once we had that meme, like, absolutely do more of that. We applaud that. So I mean, that was the takeaway, is like having those opportunities not only gets them thinking, but then gives them permission to do what they may not step forward and do kind of on their own because I'm not sure that's their role.
Yeah. Well, and that, it's going to be a dance, right? Because you're like, yeah, go ahead and get to know them and introduce yourself and maybe work out alongside them and go slow that day. And there's going to be some point where you'll continue to refine that role or expectations and be like, well, I don't want you to give them corrections, right? I don't want you to do some other workout for the day, right? So there's going to be some boundary that you set at some point, but the fact that you're in that dialogue with your clients saying, how can we both show up to make this the best possible experience for new people while still making sure you have a great workout and you enjoy being a member? Like, how do we do that together? Like, that's brilliant. I mean, it's so smart and such a good use of a community. You mentioned for me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think the other thing we learned was we got the feedback was, even if people have been active in the past, they're probably lapsed for the most part for some period of time. And that, sometimes our workouts are, could be too difficult for those people. And we don't, we've stopped using regressions, progressions, and we just use kind of variations because it's a negative. But even if we do all that kind of positioning, you have 12 people doing hardcore stuff and I'm doing something body weight, you feel bad.
Yeah, of course.
So we have to find a way to make it okay to be like that. So it's setting expectations, having a member go over and do it with them. But even with all of that, members would just say, oh, sometimes like I can see this person, I'm like, they're never coming back. That's the member saying it to themselves because they're going to be so sore. And we've had instances where, it was Squattober and we had I forget, it was like 200 bodyweight squats or something ridiculous. All of our members were like, oh, let's take the challenge. We had a new person come in, did it, and then went ghost after his trial for about 3 days. And when I finally got home, he says, listen, I've been home from work for 4 days because I can't walk. I'm not coming back.
Oh, no. Yeah. Not the best.
But it's like we forget, like when we're on this, like, and our kind of long-term members love that challenge. Is like, and just for all of our coaches is to say, think about that program when someone who hasn't worked out for 2 years is like, how would we execute it and have it a good experience? Because if you can't answer that question, we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, it's such a great reminder to our listeners and great reminder for your team to always be thinking about what is the experience of this person who's walking in the door for the first time, and and the experience we don't want is for them to be in bed sore for 4 days, thinking that every time they come here they're going to feel broken and they're going to feel out of shape and they're not going to be able to go to work. It's not ideal. The other thing you said, which you said quickly, but I think is worth repeating, is I also just love the change in language from talking about progressions and regressions to just talking about variations. I think words like that matter. I think, it's something, listeners, if you and your team aren't having that conversation, it might be worth making that switch, because if you're in a class with all new people, all new strangers, we know how intimidating that can be for the first time. And if someone walks over to you or even shouts at you from across the room, hey, do this regression, and you're the only one doing something that no one else is doing, that feels shitty. It feels you feel like the odd kid out, the kid not picked for the sports team, and so I feel like I think that's really smart to use some language that's more inclusive is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know we could probably keep talking forever about this topic, but let me ask one more question on this topic of balancing adults in sports performance setting. Is what are you still learning? What are the places where you still are trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think we're still learning to make sure we understand that new client journey when they walk in the door, and I think we're just recognizing it's going to be different. It's not like one journey. If someone has been coming for a gym, been working out hard, come to our gym, they don't need an on-ramp. They're ready to go. Again, someone who's been lax needs an on-ramp, needs a way to ease our way into it. So really kind of, we're still learning how to map out that journey and understanding it's not the same for every person. I think we've kind of been looking at it like, well, this is one generic way we're going to integrate people, and I've come to the conclusion that, we're going to have multiple kind of paths for people to come in the door. If they're newbies, we want to do something different than like a hardcore person that's just switching gyms and just got hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really smart, Chris, because that getting to know you kind of dating process that happens through marketing and sales and often through a trial period. It's about getting enough information from the person to design an experience that actually is going to meet them where they're at and ideally exceed their expectations. And that's a dance. And as much as you can focus on a single avatar or a single kind of client, you're often going to get people outside of that lane. And we want to try and capture as many of those people as possible, knowing, and I know you know this well, that some people are just not going to be a fit. Some people are so outside of that avatar lane that it's not worth it for us to, change all the ways we do things and serve them. It's better for them to go find somewhere new that actually is for someone like them. But I think that's really wise. And I think it's something that is an ever changing or ever growing process for most of us. It's just finding better and better ways to create an onboarding experience that meets each person where they're at is a tough thing to do. So yeah, good for you.
And I think making it okay to recognize a non-match. Like I think we had a person on a trial, and it was part of a program where people brought in for a couple of weeks, and interviewed her, and she's like, I love Jane Fonda tapes. I just can't get enough of those. And do you have step aerobics? So this wasn't going to be a match, but we created a great first 2 weeks, but had no expectations. Which was okay. I think if you kind of create that, like recognizing that that's okay, but you're still going to have good experience, she'll talk well about you outside the gym. So it's okay to be not a match.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's it, Chris. I think, we have a lot of people come to Mark Fisher Fitness and we know they're not going to be a fit. And so our job is to make it the best possible first and maybe only date they ever have. So they go out in the world and say nice things about us, right? I think that's fantastic. And to normalize the fact, on our sales team, on the rest of our team, that everyone comes in is going to be a match for our style of fitness, our energy level. At MFF, there's all kinds of other things they might not be a good fit for, our insanity. And same thing for you, right? They just might not thrive in an environment that is focused on performance in the way that y'all are. And that's okay. That's okay. Where it's better to be honest and help them find a fitness home they actually love than to, cram a square peg in a round hole. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one more topic before we wrap things up here. I know that, and this is kind of tangential to what we've been talking about, but, like many of us, you have been, building the business back up after COVID. And a lot of that building back up for many of us has looked like growing our team and delegating more and more as our team grows. I know you've been doing that really well. You have specifically kind of a number 2 who's kind of a fitness director. I forget if that's exactly his title. And I know you've been working really hard to kind of delegate more and more on this person's plate and learn how to make them into a manager that you need them to be. And it's such a topic that so many listeners on the podcast ask us to talk about is, how to turn employees into managers who may be first-time managers. And I know you've had some successes and some challenges in that. I just thought maybe you would share some things that have been working well in terms of making this person into a solid manager for you.
Yeah, I think that the first thing is to really clearly define their roles. Because usually if someone's kind of promoted within, it's not quite clear to them where their authority is. So I think for me, I've always told someone in the role that he's in is like from the floor out is your world. So I'm not a coach. I have a point of view on how the experience should look, but I have no idea how to coach a deadlift or a squat, or I know enough only to be dangerous. So the challenge him was like, I want that to be your world. This is your imprint, it's your program. So that empowers that person really just to say, okay, I give them some authority to make some changes.
Yep.
I'll certainly have an opinion and I'll share them with you, but I'll never, if the point is like, if I get to the point where I don't worry about anything on the floor, I'm in heaven. So that gives them a wide, kind of ownership. And then I think the other skill that I highly value is having that person or person be influential up the chain of command. So basically, I've told this person and prior people, like, your job is to influence me.
Sure.
So I'm not always going to dictate down, and you're not going to always dictate up. So you have to figure out a way, like, what information does he like to look for? How does he make decisions? And then when you present something to me, you've got all that figured out, and you're going to be successful in convincing me that you're right. And it's going to be a much more rewarding environment to work in, as opposed to, if you have someone that brings ideas and everything's shut down, they won't be there long.
Yeah. I think those are two amazing takeaways, Chris. I think that's huge. I'll just repeat them for listeners in my own words, just to underline them here for you. But one is just make sure the role is clear, right? If you're going to give someone a lane to run in, make sure it's clear what the lane is, right? I mean, just get clear about these are the tasks and places where I'm giving you authority. I'm giving you decision-making power. I'm asking you to take the lead and get really, really clear on what those boundaries are, where they have authority, what the specific tasks are included in that. So I think that's so smart. I love that. And the second one I think is even better, which is get clear that part of their job as a manager now is to understand how you think. Understand how you think about running the business, making decisions in the business, so that they can start to influence you, right, and manage up to help you be the best leader you can be by, being that kind of middle person, right? That's part of what management is help people get things right, so that you can help make the right decisions about the future. And so if they understand what you care about, the metrics you care about, the information you need to make good decisions, all that, they can be a really effective manager for you and influence you in really powerful ways. And the fact that you're already having that conversation is huge. So kudos to you, because that's often something that doesn't come for a long time when we're developing managers. And the fact that you're leading with that as a topic that's on your radar is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think what solidified for me would be thinking back, and I've gone through this process with other people, like, who's your favorite boss ever?
Mm-hmm.
Think about why they're your favorite boss. I just had a boss early in my career, like, she knew every question to ask. She knew exactly how to, look at a problem and find out exactly what the weak point of the problem was. So I was much prepared because I knew how she worked, to make sure I could get myself covered. So then, as I'm kind of managing people, it was just like, I'm not always right. I'm probably mostly wrong.
Yep.
So, you need to convince me I'm wrong. And if you can do that, you're going to be more successful.
Yep. And it's exactly it. They're going to have a better time. They're going to feel like they have more, autonomy and influence to be able to do things in ways that make sense to them. And I think the other thing you're doing here subtly is you're normalizing also failure. You're normalizing the fact that I'm going to get it wrong as the boss. And I need you to tell me when I'm getting it wrong. I need you to tell me when I'm making a crappy decision. I need you to tell me when you disagree, and that it's okay for us to talk about it. That, that kind of dialogue is not conflict. It's collaboration, right? That kind of dialogue is actually the way we improve as a team, is by getting really good at disagreeing and putting all of our heads together to make better decisions. So those are fantastic tips. Similar questions I asked before, when it comes to creating a manager in your business, what are you still working on? What's still in progress?
I think, new managers really have a hard time differentiating between peers and people they're managing. So I think they give people passes sometimes for issues because they're friends with them, and they're afraid to be, kind of dictatorial. And we all have to be some level of that. So trying to find that balance between how do I hold people accountable that used to be my peers, and how do I do that? We went through an interview process for him for the first time, and part of his challenge was like he'd look at a resume and we'd interview people, and we spent a lot of time highlighting all the things that that person is good at, as opposed to are they a good fit or not. So getting him, I think by the end of the process, he was a lot better at that. So
yeah, I think that's huge. I think you're exactly right that when managers first put on that manager hat, the thing that they struggle with often, and you said this so well, Chris, is like, now what? People are both my friends, but I'm also the boss of them. I was their peer yesterday, and today I'm kind of in charge. I don't want to be a dictator, but I also have to get shit done. And that is something they absolutely need help and guidance with. So the fact that you can be there acknowledging that that's hard for your manager, I think is so important, because you will teach them how you learn to do it. And that's mentorship, right? That we're doing is providing mentorship and support for managers who are learning for the first time how to wear that manager hat and find their own style. And so, yeah, good for you. That's awesome. I'm sure we'll keep talking about that more and more. Well, thanks for the great conversation. We're coming up on 30 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up here. But for all our listeners who want to learn more about you, follow Velocity Sports Performance, where do they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so basically Instagram is VSP Norwood. And then Velocity Sports Performance on Facebook.
Yeah, Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this, Chris. Second time on the podcast. I'm sure we'll have you back again. And I really appreciate this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all your help, Michael. Thanks.
Well, I hope you loved today's podcast. And forgive me, I want to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, head over to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, and get your free self-assessment, the ultimate training gym owner report card. I promise you, you're going to want to dig into this resource and get the support you need, finding crystal clarity on exactly where you need to be focusing to create a life and a business you love.